Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I want to start today with something that might sound crazy at first. There is no such thing as failure. Only lessons. I know. I used to hate hearing that. Every time something went wrong in my life, someone would say, "It's just a lesson." And inside, would think, "No. This is a disaster." But everything changed for me because of one story. One moment. One experience that completely shifted how I see setbacks. And today, I want to share that with you. A few years ago, I was convinced I had finally found my big break. I had poured months of work into a project. Late nights. Early mornings. Sacrificed weekends. Ignored friends. Ignored sleep. I told myself, this is it. This is the turning point. I imagined the success before it even happened. I could see the results in my mind. The recognition. The money. The validation. The moment where I would finally feel like I made it. But then, everything collapsed. The project failed. Not slowly. Not gently. It crashed hard. The response was cold. The numbers were terrible. The feedback was brutal. And the worst part wasn't even what people said. The worst part was what I started saying to myself. You're not good enough. You wasted your time. You should have known better. Maybe you're just not meant for this. Have you ever had that moment? When one setback suddenly becomes proof that you're incapable? When your mind takes one event and turns it into a life sentence? I remember sitting alone that night, staring at my screen, feeling this heavy silence around me. It felt like everything I believed about myself was cracking. And I wasn't just disappointed. I was embarrassed. I felt exposed. Like I had tried to step into a bigger version of myself and got pushed back down. For days, I avoided thinking about it. I distracted myself. I told people I didn't care. I pretended it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered a lot. Because deep down, I didn't just think the project failed. I thought I failed. And that's the moment where most of us get stuck. We don't separate the event from our identity. We don't say, that attempt didn't work. We say, I don't work. And that difference changes everything. About a week later, I met someone who unknowingly changed my perspective forever. It was a small, random conversation. Nothing dramatic. But sometimes the smallest conversations create the biggest shifts. I was telling him about what happened, expecting sympathy. Instead, he asked me one simple question. What did it teach you? I almost laughed. I thought he didn't understand. I wanted him to say, that sucks. I wanted him to say, you deserved better. But he didn't. He just repeated it. What did it teach you? At first, I had no answer. I just felt pain. But later that night, I sat down and really thought about it. If this wasn't a failure, if this was a lesson, what was it trying to teach me? And that's when everything started to shift. I realized I had rushed certain parts of the process. I had ignored small warning signs because I was too focused on the end result. I had avoided asking for feedback early because I didn't want criticism. I had built something based on what I thought people wanted instead of what they actually needed. The truth was uncomfortable. But it was powerful. The project didn't fail because I was incapable. It failed because I skipped steps. It failed because I was inexperienced in certain areas. It failed because I still had things to learn. And suddenly, that didn't feel like a verdict. It felt like training. Think about it. When a child tries to walk and falls, we don't call it failure. We call it learning. When someone goes to the gym and can't lift a heavy weight on the first day, we don't say they failed. We say they're building strength. So why do we treat our goals differently? Why do we expect ourselves to be perfect the first time? The truth is, we have been conditioned to fear failure. School teaches us that wrong answers are bad. Society celebrates overnight success. Social media shows the highlight reel, not the practice sessions. So when we stumble, we think something is wrong with us. But stumbling is part of movement. If you're not moving, you can't trip. Over the next few months, instead of quitting, I did something different. I studied my failure like it was a textbook. I looked at every mistake. Not with shame, but with curiosity. I asked, why did this happen? What assumption did I make? What skill am I missing? What would I do differently? And something amazing happened. The more I treated it like a lesson, the less it hurt. The more I saw it as data instead of drama, the more control I felt. I stopped saying, I failed. I started saying, I learned. The next time I tried again, I wasn't the same person. I was sharper. More aware. More strategic. I asked for feedback early. I tested ideas before committing fully. I slowed down when needed. And the results? They were completely different. It wasn't perfect. But it worked. That's when I understood something powerful. The first attempt wasn't wasted. It was tuition. It was training. It was the price of growth. And if I had succeeded the first time, I would have skipped the foundation I desperately needed. Let me tell you another story that reinforced this belief even more. There was a time in my life when I faced rejection that felt deeply personal. It wasn't a project this time. It was an opportunity one really wanted. I had prepared for weeks. I believed I was ready. I pictured myself already in that position. But when the response came, it was a no. Not a maybe. Not a later. Just a no. That no echoed in my head for days. It felt like a door slammed shut. And again, my mind tried to turn it into a story about who I was. You're not good enough. They saw something you don't. You're behind everyone else. But this time, I remembered the question. What did it teach you? So instead of spiraling, I requested feedback. That was uncomfortable. But necessary. And what I learned surprised me. It wasn't that I lacked potential. It wasn't that I wasn't capable. It was that I lacked experience in one specific area. One skill. One gap. And suddenly, the rejection became direction. It showed me exactly where to improve. It highlighted a blind spot I didn't even know existed. If I had been accepted, I would have entered that opportunity unprepared. I would have struggled. I might have damaged my confidence even more. Instead, I had time to grow. Months later, when a similar opportunity came around, I was ready. Not because I was lucky, but because I had learned. This is what changed everything for me. I stopped asking, why is this happening to me? And started asking, what is this teaching me? There's a huge difference between those two questions. The first one makes you a victim. The second one makes you a student. And students grow. Victims stay stuck. Now let me be honest. Shifting your mindset doesn't mean you won't feel pain. It doesn't mean you won't feel disappointed. When something you care about doesn't work out, it hurts. That's normal. You're human. But pain doesn't have to become identity. It doesn't have to become destiny. Every setback carries information. Every mistake carries instruction. Every rejection carries redirection. But you only see it if you're willing to look beyond the surface. I started noticing this pattern everywhere. Successful people weren't people who never failed. They were people who failed intelligently. They adjusted. They refined. They tried again with more wisdom. Think about it. If you look at any major breakthrough in history, behind it are countless attempts that didn't work. But those attempts weren't wasted. They were stepping stones. Each one removed what didn't work and moved closer to what did. The problem is, we judge the process too early. We see chapter 3 and think that's the whole story. But growth is messy. It's non-linear. It's unpredictable. And sometimes, the very thing that feels like a setback is setting you up. There was a time I compared myself constantly to others. I would see someone succeed and think, they're ahead. I'm behind. But what I didn't see were their lessons. I didn't see their early drafts. I didn't see their sleepless nights. I didn't see the times they almost quit. Comparison makes failure feel permanent. But perspective makes it temporary. When I began documenting my lessons instead of my losses, everything changed. I kept a journal where I wrote down every mistake and what it taught me. Over time, that journal became a map. It showed me patterns. It showed me growth. It showed me that I wasn't stuck. I was evolving. And here's something important. Sometimes the lesson isn't about strategy or skill. Sometimes the lesson is about resilience, patience, humility, self-awareness. Not every setback is about doing something differently. Sometimes it's about becoming someone stronger. I remember a period where nothing seemed to work. Multiple efforts. Multiple disappointments. It felt like I was walking uphill with no end in sight. And I questioned everything. But looking back now, that season built my endurance. It built my discipline. It built my ability to keep going even when motivation disappeared. If everything had worked quickly, I would have been fragile. One real challenge would have broken me. But because I went through resistance, I built strength. Think of it like this. Pressure shapes diamonds. Resistance builds muscle. Friction creates fire. Without tension, there is no transformation. And maybe the reason setbacks hurt so much is because we attach our worth to outcomes. We think success equals value. And failure equals lack. But your worth doesn't fluctuate with results. Your worth is constant. Results are feedback. Not judgment. Once I understood that, I became more courageous. I started taking bigger risks. Because even if things didn't work out, I knew I would gain something. Experience. Clarity. Direction. Growth. And here's the beautiful part. When you stop fearing failure, you start playing bigger. You stop holding back. You stop waiting for perfect conditions. You move. There's a powerful freedom in knowing that nothing is wasted. Even heartbreak teaches you about boundaries and self-respect. Even financial loss teaches you about planning and priorities. Even missed opportunities teach you about timing and preparation. Every experience is shaping you. Even the ones you wish never happened. I want you to think about something in your life right now that feels like a failure. Maybe it's a relationship that ended. A business idea that didn't work. An exam you didn't pass. A goal you didn't reach. Instead of labeling it as failure, ask yourself, what is it teaching me? Be honest. Be objective. Remove the emotion for a moment and look at it like a scientist. What patterns do you see? What assumptions were wrong? What skills need development? What boundaries need strengthening? You might discover that the setback is actually guidance. And sometimes, the lesson isn't immediate. Sometimes you only understand it months or years later. There are things that once devastated me that I now feel grateful for. Because if they hadn't happened, would be on a completely different path. Maybe a smaller one. Growth often feels like loss at first. Because you're losing an old version of yourself. An old plan. An old expectation. But what replaces it is often stronger. I'm not saying celebrate every setback with a smile. I'm saying don't let it define you. Don't let one moment convince you that your story is over. It's not over. It's unfolding. There is no such thing as failure. Only lessons. And lessons are proof that you're in the game. That you're trying. That you're stretching beyond comfort. The only true failure is refusing to learn. Refusing to adjust. Refusing to try again. When I look back at the story that changed my perspective, I'm grateful it didn't work the first time. Because that failure forced me to grow in ways success never could. It humbled me. It sharpened me. It prepared me. And today, when something doesn't go my way, I still feel disappointment. But I don't feel defeated. I pause. I reflect. I ask the question. What did this teach me? That question has saved me from quitting more times than I can count. So if you're in a season of setbacks right now, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not incapable. You are learning. And learning is progress. Keep going. Keep adjusting. Keep growing. Because one day, you'll look back at what you once called failure and realize it was the foundation. Thank you for being here. Thank you for growing with me. And remember, every setback carries a lesson, if you're willing to see it.